Have you ever thought about what is actually underneath you when you are floating in the middle of a lake and the shore is far behind? We all assume the answer is simple: mud, rocks, maybe some fish. But there are places on this planet where that assumption falls apart completely. They are called bottomless, and for centuries, every attempt to find solid ground in them has ended the same way, with failure. Behind the calm surface, behind water that looks no different from any other lake, there are vertical shafts and giant voids dropping hundreds of meters into the earth. This is a story about places where reality turns out to be far deeper than anything you could make up. Number 6. Lake Cerak Kel. In Kabardino-Balkaria, in the mountains of southern Russia, there is a place that makes even the most experienced scientists stop and reconsider what they thought they knew. It is called Lake Tserik-Kel, and it looks like someone painted it in Photoshop. This lake has a genuinely strange character. It never freezes, even when blizzards hit, and every river around it has turned to solid ice. Cerak Kel sits there at a steady 9.3 degrees Celsius, as if someone left a giant heater running somewhere far beneath it. The locals call it the Rotten Lake because the whole place smells like sulfur, hydrogen sulfide dissolved throughout the water, which is also what gives it that eerie turquoise glow that reportedly shifts up to 16 times a day with the changing light. But the most bizarre thing about this lake is not the color or the temperature. If you sit on the shore and watch the river flowing out of it, you will very quickly start having questions about the laws of physics. Every day, about 70 million liters of water leave this small reservoir. That is roughly 1 metric ton of water per second pouring out into the Cerak River. For a long time, it was believed that the bottom sat at about 250 meters. To give you a sense of that scale, that is the height of a massive skyscraper. But when professional researchers finally arrived with serious technology, it turned out that the old measurements were, to put it gently, modest. They brought deep-sea robots that cost a fortune, compact underwater machines fitted with spotlights and mechanical arms. These devices began their slow descent into the abyss, while operators on the shore watched the monitors, waiting to see the bottom appear and finally close the book on this mystery. But the robot kept going down. The numbers on the depth counter kept climbing, and beneath the machine, there was still nothing but emptiness. At 258 meters, the robot discovered something that gave everyone on the surface goosebumps. There was no flat bottom. Instead, a giant lateral cave opened up, branching off to the side and dropping even deeper. It turned out that Cerak Kel is not just a pit filled with water. It is an entrance to a colossal system of underground labyrinths that cut through the mountains. When the robot pushed to 279 meters, the researchers realized they were just at the beginning. In 2022, Russia's emergency services sent an even more powerful robot, rated to 500 meters. It reached 292 and found another cave entrance at 280. Then it ran out of cable. But before we go there, we need to talk about a lake an hour from Moscow where the great chemist Dmitry Mendeleev supposedly lowered a 100-meter rope and never felt it hit the bottom. Number 5. Lake Bezdona. If you think you need to travel to the edge of the world for real secrets, Lake Bezdona in the Solnechno-Gorsk region will change your mind. At first glance, it is a completely ordinary, even modest, round pond lost in the woods. Its diameter is only about 160 meters. It looks like you could swim across it in a couple of minutes. But this was the place that put two of Russia's most famous people in a deadlock. The great scientist Dmitry Mendeleev lived nearby at his estate and decided to find out why the locals talked about this lake with such fear. The poet Alexander Blok wrote in his diary that the lake was supposedly connected directly to the world ocean. Mendeleev, as a man of science, decided to settle the question the simple way. He took a boat, a long rope, and a heavy lead weight, and went out to feel the bottom once and for all. What happened next surprised even him. He lowered the rope meter by meter, but the weight just kept sinking. 5 meters, 10, 20, 30, and there was no sign of the end. When the 100-meter rope ran out completely, the weight still had not struck anything. And the strangest part was that it did not stop the way it does when it hits sand or stone. Now, that is a great story, and it is almost certainly not true. A geographer named Mikhail Levintov led the first proper scientific study of this lake in 2018 and checked Mendeleev's archives at his nearby estate. Mendeleev was an extremely meticulous person who wrote down everything, but what did happen, and what makes Lake Bezdona genuinely fascinating, is the false bottom. When Levintov's team drilled through the ice and dropped plumb lines, they hit what felt like a floor at about 4 to 6 meters. But when they pushed harder with an 8-kilogram pointed drill, it went straight through. Below the bottom was more water. Then below that, more silt. Then water again. The structure turned out to be like a giant layer cake, decomposed leaves and organic sludge called sapropel, compressed over thousands of years. The surrounding forest drops roughly 3.5 tons of leaf litter per hectare per year into the lake, and it just piles up, layer after layer after layer, for millennia. On the night of Midsummer, 1903, Alexander Bloch wrote down what a local forester told him. The lake near the village has no bottom. Sometimes boards with foreign inscriptions surface, wreckage of ships. This is an outlet of the ocean. Chemical analysis shows it is ordinary freshwater, so the ocean connection is a fairy tale. But the deeper question, what is this lake connected to, and where does the water go? That question turned out to be exactly right, because the ground beneath a lake like this is never truly solid. It is part of a network, and people have been proving that for 150 years. Number 4. The Danube sinkholes. When we say a lake has no bottom, we often forget that the earth beneath us is not a solid block of rock. It is more like a giant head of Swiss cheese, riddled with tunnels and voids. Water is always looking for a way down, and when it finds soft rock, it carves through it, creating passages that can stretch for kilometers. And sometimes those passages connect places that have no business being connected. On October the 9th, 1877, a German geologist named Adolf Knopp dumped 10 kilograms of fluorescent green dye, 20 tons of salt, and over 1,000 kilograms of shale oil into the Danube River at a spot where it kept vanishing into sinkholes. 60 hours later, all 3 tracers came out at a spring 12 kilometers away, on the other side of the European continental divide. Water that was supposed to flow east to the Black Sea was actually flowing west to the North Sea, through the Rhine. The Danube, one of Europe's great rivers, completely disappears on average 155 days per year. In 1921, it vanished for 309 days. That experiment launched an entire field of science, and the connections it has revealed since then keep getting more impossible. In 2017, researchers injected rhodamine dye into a sinkhole at Lake Jackson near Tallahassee, Florida. 35 days later, it appeared at Wakulla Spring, 30 kilometers away. That is the longest confirmed connection between a sinkhole and a spring ever documented. The water was cruising underground through Florida at about 800 meters per day, through tunnels no one has ever seen. In Slovenia, the Ljubljanica River flows on the surface, sinks underground, resurfaces, sinks again, and keeps doing this under 7 different names across 50 kilometers. A scholar named Valvassor studied this system so obsessively in the 1680s that the Royal Society in London made him a fellow. And then there is Lake Kirchnecker, a lake that covers 38 square kilometers when full, then drains through underground holes over 3 to 4 weeks until the lake bed becomes a meadow. Then it fills back up in 2 to 3 days. Number 3. Lake Peigneur. And when these underground networks fail catastrophically, the results are almost impossible to believe. On November the 20th, 1980, a Texaco oil rig accidentally punctured a salt mine 370 meters beneath Lake Peigneur in Louisiana. The entire lake drained into the mine in under 2 hours. It created a whirlpool that swallowed the drilling rig, 11 barges, a tugboat, and 65 acres of land. It reversed the flow of a 12-mile canal, creating a 50-meter waterfall as the Gulf of Mexico rushed in to fill the void. The lake went from 3 meters deep and fresh to 60 meters deep and salt. Overnight. Every mine worker escaped, but the lake they knew was gone forever. The ground is not solid. It is flowing. And if all of this sounds like the scale is already hard to believe, we have not even gotten to the place that broke every measuring device sent into it. Number 2. Hranice Abyss. In the Czech Republic, surrounded by quiet forests, there is a small lake at the bottom of a limestone sinkhole. It looks like nothing, but it is here that the deepest flooded cave on the planet has been found. It is called the Hranice Abyss, and for a long time, people thought it was a couple of 100 meters deep. The more advanced the technology got, the more wrong that turned out to be. A Polish cave diver named Krzysztof Stanowski started exploring Hranice in 1999 and spent 17 years going deeper and deeper. In 2016, his team built a custom robot with 500 meters of fiber optic cable. Stanowski personally dove to around 200 meters to guide the robot through a tangle of fallen trees at the cave's throat, a section they called the Mikado. Below that, the cave opens into a featureless vertical shaft. The robot descended to 404 meters. The cable ran out. Below it, the camera was still pointing into open blue water. No walls, no hint of a floor, just void. When they tried to pull it back up, it got tangled in the Mikado. Took 10 months to recover. Then, in 2022, a spherical autonomous robot called UX-1 Neo, just 70 centimeters across, reached 450 meters below the water surface, putting the confirmed total at 519.5 meters from ground level. The team said it mapped in 2 days what 50 years of human exploration had covered. But the truly mind-bending part came from a 2020 geophysics study. Radek Klanika of the Czech Academy of Sciences used gravity measurements and electrical resistivity imaging to estimate the full depth. His number, roughly 1 kilometer. Another team pushed back in 2021, saying local faults could explain the data without needing such extreme depth. The real answer is somewhere between 800 and 1,200 meters. Nobody knows for certain. What everyone agrees on is the water chemistry. The abyss sits in Devonian limestone that is 360 to 420 million years old. The water is warm, 15 to 19 degrees, loaded with dissolved carbon dioxide rising from the Earth's mantle, and so acidic it is dissolving the rock around it every second, making the cave wider as we sit here talking about it. Helium isotope analysis confirms these gases are coming from deep within the Earth, not from any surface process. The air 1 meter above the water is unbreathable. Standard scuba exhale bubbles trigger chemical reactions that instantly kill visibility. That is why every serious exploration has relied on closed-circuit rebreathers and robots. And the robots keep running out of cable. Number 1. Mobile cave. So you have underground networks stretching tens of kilometers, cave shafts plunging half a kilometer into mantle-heated water, and a planet's crust that turns out to be shot through with pathways nobody has charted. It sounds like it should be completely lifeless down there. It is not even close. In the caves of Slovenia, there is a translucent blind salamander called the Olem, about 25 centimeters long, with feathery pink gills and vestigial eyes sealed beneath its skin. It can live over 100 years, the longest-lived amphibian known, and it can go a full decade without eating a single thing. Its lineage split off from all other amphibians roughly 110 million years ago. When floods wash olems out of cave springs, locals have historically believed they were baby dragons. Charles Darwin discussed the olem in On the Origin of Species as a case study in adaptation to total darkness. But in 1986, a geologist named Cristian Lascu discovered something far stranger at the bottom of an artificial shaft in Romania. Mobile Cave had been sealed from the surface for about 5.5 million years. The air inside was 1 to 2% hydrogen sulfide, with dangerously low oxygen, completely lethal to almost anything from the surface, and the cave was teeming with life. 52 invertebrate species, 37 of them found nowhere else on Earth. The entire food chain runs on chemosynthesis, bacteria converting hydrogen sulfide into energy, the same way ecosystems work at deep-sea hydrothermal vents. except this was the first time anyone had found it happening on land, and in New Mexico's Lechuguilla cave. Sealed for 4 to 7 million years, researchers found bacteria that are naturally resistant to modern antibiotics, including last resort drugs. One strain was producing 38 different antimicrobial compounds, 3 of which were entirely new to science. These organisms evolved antibiotic resistance millions of years before humans invented antibiotics. Under Texas, the Edwards Aquifer hosts over 60 species found nowhere else: blind salamanders, blind catfish, and crustaceans whose food chain starts with bacteria that eat rock. In the blue holes of the Bahamas, scientists found the Remipedia, a whole class of crustacean unknown until 1981, with fang-like venom injectors that make them the only venomous crustaceans on the planet. NASA funded one of those cave diving robots, D-Epther-X, a 1,500-kilogram autonomous machine with 54 sonar sensors, specifically as a prototype for exploring the underground oceans of Jupiter's moon Europa. The logic was straightforward. If you want to practice finding life in a subterranean ocean you cannot see, start with the ones beneath your own feet. That single robot found over 100 microbes in one Mexican sinkhole, including 3 entirely new branches on the tree of life. So the next time someone calls a lake bottomless, understand what that word actually means. It does not mean infinitely deep. It means nobody has ever reached the place where the lake ends and the underground river system begins. What are your thoughts on this bottomless lake? Share in the comments below.